Hello, students, and anyone else brave enough to watch The Rise of the Republic. Slightly blurry background picture, not quite sure what's going on with that. But we'll try to avoid all the blurs as we continue the video. So, we're looking at the rise of the Roman Republic, which might be a little more specific for you if you're looking for the rise of another republic, perhaps the Republic of Texas. I suggest you look elsewhere. Now, when it comes to ancient Rome, we're looking at a pretty long time period here. And for the Romans, it's really broken up into a number of periods. So we have this first period of expansion, starting around 509 BC. And this is where you have the Romans driving out the Etruscans and really focusing on conquering and expanding the borders of their territory throughout the Italian peninsula. And when you're thinking about a map of Rome, certainly the Italian peninsula is not very large when it comes to the expanse of Europe. But this is where the Romans begin, is this spreading out and pushing through the Italian peninsula. Now, not all is fun and games for the Romans. They're not constantly expanding. The Gauls in the north, if you look at the map, the Gauls reside up in the north. You can see some images of the Gauls here. The Gauls at various times invade Rome. In two instances, they burn Rome to the ground, which is certainly a bummer for the Romans. Perhaps a good thing for the Gauls. But you have a great deal of warfare, especially in the between 500 and about 300 BC, between the Romans and the Gauls. But as the Romans are throughout history, the army is able to give them power and help them both push back the Gauls when the Gauls invade, as well as expand into territory of the Gauls. Now, the army itself is made up of plebeians, and thinking back to our looking at different groups, we have plebeians who are the lower class, mostly farmers, and these are the people that are making up the army. Now, for a couple hundred years, you have plebeians that are making up the army, and you have the army fighting. So when it comes to how do those plebeians feel, they aren't particularly happy to be in a constant state, almost, of warfare for an extremely long amount of time. So you start seeing a lot of unrest amongst this group, namely because they have very little say in the decision-making process. Now, when it comes to Rome, the decision-making process from about 509, you have decisions being made by a group of people. And this group of people are a group of patricians. And it's started by this guy with a knife, who's looking very grumpy, Lucius Junius Brutus. And this group of people drives out the last remaining monarch, the last remaining king, and they establish a republic, which means that elected officials are ruling, that elected officials are governing. Now, in this republic, you have a senate. In early, about 500, afterwards, you see approximately 300 patricians that are elected into the senate. And then you also have two consuls, and consuls were in command of the army. So you have this idea that the Senate is advising the consuls and these are the people that are going to be making decisions when it comes to military engagements, both defense as well as invasions. Now, since the decisions are entirely being made by patricians, the plebeians who are making up the army are not particularly happy that they have no say. So they have absolutely no decision when it comes to going to war. So since the plebeians are a large group of people, in 494 BC, when Rome is a pretty large city, about 20 to 40,000 people, the plebeians leave the city, and they demand that they have a voice, demand that they have a say when it comes to decision making. And when it comes down to it, the patricians have to listen because their entire army now is rebelling. And what they decide to do is they give the plebeians something known as tribunes. And you have these elected officials who are speaking for the plebeians in the Senate. Later, these tribunes are given the power to veto, given power to overrule various decisions by the Senate, and their power and number grows within Rome. And not only are the common people, the plebeians, given representation in the Senate, but also you start to see, especially with this, the 12 tables, you have laws that are written down. Thus, the patricians, in their wealth and power, cannot change the laws or make them up as they go. So the laws apply to everyone. So if we think back to Hammurabi's Code, we have this idea that written down laws that are publicly posted really keep everyone in line, keep everyone in check. And with such equal rule between the plebeians and the patricians, you have a lot more equality when it comes to Rome. Thus, people are more eager to expand. And what we'll get into on Wednesday, or perhaps Thursday, we have more expansion, that the Romans are spreading out further from the Italian peninsula, and in the second period they spread out to Carthage. And on the right we will fight, well, not we, hopefully, unless we are time travelers, which would be cool, but we will look at the fight of the First Punic Wars.